This is TWiT.
All right, Mikah, what is Apple Music doing here?
Yeah.
Classical music.
Yeah, so this is interesting. Way back in, well, I guess not way back, but back in 2021, Apple acquired a company called Primephonic, and Primephonic was a classical music streaming service.
I remember when that happened.
And
Actually, I remember that news.
We didn't know exactly what was going to happen as a result of this. Was Apple just kind of buying the company to buy the rights to then roll that music into its own Apple Music library? What was going to take place? Well, Apple decided or has decided that the way that it wants to handle it is by creating an entirely separate app, Apple Music Classical. And this is a music streaming app that is specific to classical music. If you have an Apple Music subscription, it works for Apple Music Classical. Apple has published the app in the App Store for pre-order, so you can pre-order it today. And what that means is when it comes out, then it will just automatically download to your phone. It comes out on March 28th. But what's going on here is it's pretty clearly Primephonic at work in terms of the library of content, the deals, all of that stuff. In fact, Apple says it's the world's largest classical music catalog in the world. It's got more than 5 million tracks. And it also has new classical music releases and, of course, old classical music releases together. It is also an exclusive library. So there are albums that are exclusive to Apple Music Classical. And what makes it a little bit different from the base Apple Music app is that the search is a little bit different. You can search by composer, by work, by conductor, by catalog number. And so those of you who are, classical music aficionados, be it Baroque style music or others, then you can use those. You're probably familiar with those terms of looking through via catalog number. It also has what Apple says is the highest audio quality of any classical music library, streaming library, up to 192 kilohertz, 24-bit high-res lossless audio quality. So those of you with the setup that can handle that, you can listen in all of the glory that is there. And then they also are touting the spatial audio features. So if you want to listen in, with spatial audio, you're able to do that for the albums that support it. Now, another bit of I think, uniqueness that makes this app different from just looking, because I could go into Apple Music and find a lot of classical music there. But 9to5Mac points out there are two kind of important features. One is that the metadata for these tracks, for this music, is all as complete and accurate as it possibly can be. So a lot of times when someone's listening to classical music, they do want to read everything they possibly can. Who was the conductor? What was going on? All of that stuff as much as possible. And then this, I think, is kind of interesting and fun. Thousands of editorial notes, including composer biographies, descriptions of key works, and more. So I like the idea, of being able to go and listen to a song and then know the history of it and who the composer was, maybe when it was played, where it was played, that kind of thing. So yeah, between Ludwig van Beethoven and modern musicians, being able to hear or rather find all of that and be able to sort of sort it out is really cool. And then, of course, they also have editorial team members who are going through, sorting the content, making choices every week, just like they have with the standard Apple Music library. So The app itself, there are screenshots because, as I mentioned, you can find it on the App Store. So you can get, and I'll put this in the show notes. You can get an early kind of peek at how it looks. Across the bottom, you've got a system that's a lot like the Apple Music app. There's Listen Now, there's Browse, there's Library, and there's Search. So those 4 tabs. And then they show a search for Beethoven, and then there's the Piano Concerto No. 5 in E-flat major, and then they've got editor's choice stuff, so specific tracks, and then popular recordings of Piano Concerto No. 5 in E-flat major, and so you can see kind of which ones have really been of interest to other people. Numbered works, and then last but not least, they show that this, of course, is available in high-res lossless for many a song. So it's I think it's going to be very exciting for folks who are into classical music. And I like, too, that it's for folks who have long been into classical music, but also for folks who might be getting into it or are wanting to get into it. There are editorial playlists that are specific to kind of learning a little bit more about it. So yeah, this is exciting. I like that, it's a rollover. If you've got an Apple Music subscription, this is available at no additional cost. And of course that it comes in this very high quality with Dolby Atmos. And
a lot of classical fans actually really care about that kind of stuff. Whereas
yes.
Your casual music listener is going to care a lot less about Atmos, on their pop song. I mean,
right.
some do.
Want it just to try it, but the idea that you almost feel like you're in the audience getting to listen to the group play in front of you is kind of cool.
Yeah.
So that's coming March 28th. And if you do have an iPhone, of course, we've got links in the show notes and everything. You can go and pre-order it, which again is just like pre-download essentially. It'll be available to you at that point. I think for me, the most fascinating thing is that they have decided to separate it out as its own app. And
that's kind of what's on my mind too.
I will be curious how much of what's available there will also be available in the Apple Music app when I'm listening to classical music. If it's just the notes and just the editorial choices or whatever that are only in the Apple Music Classical, because in theory, they would have the high quality formats available in the standard Apple Music library. So I'm going to be looking into that. After this comes out, I will do a comparison to see what's different between the two and why you need to have that extra app on your phone, essentially.
Yeah, it's interesting because it actually couples pretty nicely with what we talked about in my story of the week, right? Yeah. Spotify has other aspects of its business, chose to kind of sandwich it all into a single app and promote through that app. And that's, undoubtedly the core users of Spotify are, music listeners. The other users, probably a much smaller number.
Yes.
Spotify wants it to be bigger, so they kind of put it in the app. And when I look at this, I mean, I have to imagine, I'm probably not out of bounds for saying this, but the number of people who care so much about classical music, I mean, it's a passionate group, but it probably is a much smaller number than the overall number of Apple Music subscribers.
Yeah.
And so Apple is left in this, position of, do we take this extra feature, this extra avenue within the app, and put it in the app that everybody already has, or do we spin it out and have it be its own thing because that isn't going to appeal to 90% of the people who actually use the app?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so there's an interesting kind of comparison to be made between Spotify's approach and Apple Music's approach, or Apple's approach.
And funny that they've sort of rolled these things out at similar times.
Yeah.
Spotify does that, and then Apple's like, we heard you liked classical music, so instead of putting the classical music into the app, we gave you a separate app for those of you who like classical music.
Yeah. The
rest of you continue to use the app as you have up to this point. Although I will say, I did, as an Apple Music subscriber, this morning, get a notification That's how I found out about this. So they still are giving a push notification to say, hey, this is coming soon.
But you're not logging in Apple Music the way you have however many years of using it, and the entire front screen is like, here's all of the classical stuff, and then you got to like navigate around that. And
it's my library first and foremost. I'd have to go to the Browse tab to get to all of that stuff, which is how I want it to be.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, that's really cool. I do remember when this news first started a couple of years ago, and it was like, okay, well, what is this leading to?
What could it be?
And what is this leading to? Apparently, it takes a couple of years, and then we get there.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if there were different, methods. They had some tests of doing it within the app, and one team trying to do it as an external app, all that kind of stuff. And who knows how much of it is legal stuff, where the library of content that they did license, and however that all works, like that could be that it can't be part of Apple Music itself. I mean, there's and of course that's all speculation.
Terms of service that someone agrees to in Apple Music, and how that applies to that whole catalog of music compared to the however many decades of recordings that exist in the realm of classical music. And
it's a whole different kind of thing, and that's kind of what Knox Harrington was saying in the chat is. Because, of course, with other music, you've got covers occasionally, but it's not the same thing. A lot of this is going to be different groups performing this music that is meant to be performed by different groups.
Yeah, right.
These composers were writing this to be performed.
It's not a cover song.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
we don't think of classical music as like cover songs. So this is a cover of that Bach, song. No, it's not the same thing. It's a totally different landscape.
Yeah,
but very cool. Very, very cool. And there's a lot of people. I didn't mean to downplay the number of people who are passionate or who would care about this.
I didn't
feel
like you did.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people who are absolutely thrilled that this exists, and that Apple that Apple is behind it. Right. Because Apple can do a lot of things like this the right way.
The right way. Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm hopeful that they're handling it with the care and respect that it deserves.
Right.
And
exactly.
I honestly think that developing a whole new app does speak to that. So,
Indeed.
This episode of Tech Break is brought to you by ACI Learning. IT Pro from ACI Learning offers binge-worthy cybersecurity and IT training in everything your team needs to advance your IT learning. Use code TWiT30 at checkout for 30% off a standard or premium IT Pro membership. Visit go.acilearning.com/twit to learn more.